Network. Welcome to this Ultimate Coaching Hour. I'm Michelle Brigman. I'm the Executive Vice President of Operations for the network. I'm a Hard-Won Wisdom podcast co-host, a health coach, and corporate executive. And I am so excited to be with you all. And thank you for making time for this incredible event. Now, toward the end, we're going to be taking your questions live, so do not be shy. I really am asking you to engage in the chat because, this is your opportunity to receive advice from the personal branding guru himself. So let's get started. It is really my honor to introduce you to 9-time New York Times bestselling author, motivational speaker, my co-host of the Hard-Won Wisdom podcast, and EVP of strategy for the Women's Leadership Network, the amazing Vaughn Germer.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And I would like to thank all of you who showed up for dragging me away from the news because I've become obsessed with the Ukraine. So thank you for giving me something else to think about. And it is my privilege to share with you this guy that I picked up on an airplane. It's the greatest networking story ever. And this is William Arruda, who is on our show today as our super expert. People know him because if you read his bio, it says, he's the premier guru on personal branding. He's the guy who basically invented the idea, or at least refined it so that we all knew what we had to do in order to get our message out there, heard, used, and projected so that we become more successful. And in doing that, he created some tools that have been used by literally 2 million people, more than 2 million people. He has certified more than 1,000 coaches in his methodology. Inc. magazine says he's the father of personal branding, and we can go on and on. But I got to tell you, what he was for me was my seatmate in first class on a flight to Barcelona. And we had a tight connection because of a mechanical difficulty out of Tampa. And when I get on that airplane, they give you a little capsule, and I guess he was looking forward to having that area all to himself. And then who does he get as his seatmate but someone who's not going to shut up? And that would be me. And how lucky I was to meet him, because we were both going to speak at the same conference for Cisco. And it started a friendship that has been, it's well over a decade long. And I've come to so appreciate him, not just because of his expertise, and it's significant. It was so big that of the 300 people that I interviewed in my last book, I gave an entire chapter to William because he's that good. But also why I appreciate him so much is because he's a truly great friend. And as we had to shift and pivot as speakers and professionals during the pandemic, he was right there with me. And I just have such great respect for him. And I'm so happy to share him with you. William, say hello.
Vaughn, I got to say, I think that's the single best introduction I've ever had. So I'll remember it forever. And ditto to you. And I'm delighted that you invited me. I'm excited to chat with everyone.
Well, as we start this, I really want you to share your story, how you realizing that personal branding mattered, and then how you turned it into an industry, and then what's happened to that industry.
Yeah, well, so I do want to correct one thing that you said. I am not the person who created personal branding. It's the amazing Tom Peters who did. I'm not as visionary as he is, clearly. However, I'm really good at stealing a really good idea. And so in Fast Company magazine in 1997, he wrote the cover story called The Brand Called You. And it was about how in the future, we will all need to think about ourselves as brands if we want to be successful and fulfilled at work. And that I picked up the magazine at work at a job that I loved. I read the article, put it down, and said, I am going to start the first ever personal branding company, because it was the intersection of my two favorite things. I love branding and I collect TV ads. I love all of that. And my favorite thing was developing my people. And so this was the combination of that. And that was that. Literally, I never, ever wanted to be an entrepreneur. I loved working for the man. I know a lot of people don't. I love working inside companies, but the pull was too strong. And so voila, I left and started my company.
When you did that, what did you see as your own personal brand, and how did you grow that and learn from that as you taught others?
I will tell you that the key tenet of personal branding is authenticity. It's about being yourself. And I think in reading it and then starting to think about, what would my methodology be and whatnot, I realized, who am I? And am I being my authentic self at work every day? And does my work appreciate that and acknowledge it and support it? And so I had to get clear about that. And I think, my brand is really about everyone else. I am fascinated by everybody. Everybody is interesting to me. And I think the idea of we are born and we are programmed to conform. Literally, your parents want you to be one way and your teacher wants you to be another way. You get to a company and they say, well, this is how we do things here. And essentially all of what makes you unique and valuable and interesting and compelling and exciting, you hide it. And what personal branding is about is the opposite of that. So that is just it's my mission in life, to give everyone permission to be their best selves.
Well, back in the day, we used to refer to something distasteful as shameless self-promotion. But branding is different, yet it does involve self-promotion. So what is the difference? And then what do you do about it?
Yeah. So, with everything in life, there's a show and a tell component, right? And the tell component is the self-promotion piece. The most important part of personal branding is the show. When you demonstrate what your brand is about every day, people experience it, they understand it, and they're able to communicate about it on your behalf. So if the tell part feels uncomfortable, then focus on the show part, and that's really going to be the biggest impact. The tell part should not be about you. It should be you delivering value to others. And when you do that, you take all the pressure off of you. So it's not, hey, look at me, I'm really smart. It's hey, I have this really brilliant idea, and I think that it would be really helpful to you because I'm looking to help make you more successful. And I think if you just pivot the mindset around that to be, it's not me bragging or chest pounding, it's me delivering some kind of value to others, and they then experience that and understand what my brand is about.
But as we tell people to come up with their brand, it's more than an elevator pitch. What is it?
Yeah. Well, so your brand actually there are 6 drivers of your brand: your values, your passions, your differentiators, your superpowers, your purpose, and your goals. And when you unearth each of these elements, because your brand is based on authenticity, so you have to be really self-reflective and look at those 6 drivers, and you kind of distill what you learn into that promise. And so your brand is your unique promise of value. Unique because it separates you from everyone who does what you do. A promise because it's authentic to you and you commit to delivering it every day in everything you do. And it has value to the people who are making decisions about you. So you don't determine the value of your brand, right? It's the people that you're seeking to influence and impact who decide that. So that's kind of where your brand lives. And the more you do that self-reflection, the clearer you get about what is that unique promise of value that you have to offer your employer.
What if people really don't see themselves as having anything unique? How do they find that?
Yeah. By the way, every single person does. Tom Peters said in his article, every brand is worthy of remark. And it's a really, and so everyone does, but we don't walk around thinking about that. So some of it is just asking yourself a lot of questions, right? What's important to me? What are my top 3 values? What are my non-negotiables? What do I think sets me apart from others? And the other half of the equation is getting feedback from others, because other people often know our brand better than we do, because we're looking at it with a weird, self-focused filter, and they're just experiencing it. So by getting input from others, and in fact, we say your brand is held in the hearts and minds of those who know you. So you might walk around in the office every day saying, I'm the most strategic person here. I'm the most strategic person here. But if we ask 10 people who know you what words they'd use to describe you, and they don't use the word strategic, you don't own the brand attribute of strategic, right? So you really need to validate all of that self-perception with feedback from the outside in.
Yeah, you've really focused on that a lot with the 360 approach. So how do you tell people to get that kind of feedback so they can develop a strong brand?
Yeah, so I created a tool that I use with my clients. It's called 360 Reach, where you can anonymously get brand feedback and, get a consolidated report, reputational report, we call it. There are other ways to do it as well. First of all, you can ask people you trust, and people who will share with you what they really think. The second thing is there's a whole bunch of stuff already about you out there. Your performance reviews. Look at your last 10 performance reviews and look for themes. What are the words or feelings or experiences that seem to come up over and over and over? When somebody introduces you to someone else, pay attention. They might say, you know what, this is the most creative person we have on our team. Or, oh, I'm so happy when so-and-so is here. You just introduced to me one of your teammates who helps make this work together. And you said, Ash, she's on top of every single thing. You introduced her with a brand attribute, right? And so I knew a little bit about her brand through you. So if we just pay attention to what people say about us, to our feedback, if you happen to be a consultant, look at your testimonials and the things that people choose to write about you. That's their experience of you. So that's your brand from the outside in.
What if what you get in feedback is not what you want as your brand?
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes, so it's really good to know that, right? Sometimes you get feedback and you think you're something, and maybe you are that, but people aren't experiencing it. So what you have to ask yourself is, okay, so I think I'm really creative, but no one seems to think I'm creative. Why is that? And then ask yourself, am I demonstrating how creative I am? I'll tell you a story. I worked with this woman in a bank, and she was in accounts payable, but she was wildly creative. Like, she was visually creative. She was artistically creative. She was creative with words. She was just amazingly creative. But she decided that, you know what, when you're in accounts payable, you can't be creative at work. So she would, do the same kind of things and whatnot. And she got feedback that didn't say she was creative. And she's like, but I am creative. And so she rethought everything she did every day to inject that creativity into it. And the number one thing she does every week is has meetings. So she said, I'm going to change the way I lead meetings to inject my creativity in it. So the email that went out inviting people was a hand-drawn invitation to attend the meeting. And then the first thing she did in the meeting was have a creative brainstorming about the biggest challenge that meeting was going to solve. And she just took every single element of a meeting, all the way through action items and follow-up, made them more creative. And then all of a sudden people started experiencing it. And by the way, people wanted to get into an accounts payable meeting. Would you like, probably not the first thing you'd want on your agenda, but they were fun because they were creative.
Sometimes our brand gets stuck on us and we get labels. Even though we want to be known as the most productive, maybe we get a label as late or slacker or troublemaker. Different labels come to different people. How do we reshape a brand when it's gotten away from us?
Yeah. So, and by the way, it's often nuanced, right? So sometimes, for example, you're always showing up late to a meeting, and it's because you're incredibly hardworking and productive, or you always have time for people and people stop you on the way to meeting rooms or whatever, right? So what you need to do is have them see the positive side of that attribute, which is, so sorry to be late, and so that they understand that what might be causing that negative brand attribute is actually something that's really positive. And in fact, there are three, we call this brand polarity. There are three different types of brand polarity. One is an overused strength, right? So if you're really confident and self-assured, if you're just a little bit too much, it's kind of arrogant, another one is just a misperception, right? So you might be really open-minded, but people see it as wishy-washy, can't make a decision, right? So how do you tweak the way you deliver that so the positive side's been seen? And then the third one is that overusing a strength. And here's the thing, you're not going to change it like this. Brands are built over time. And so brands are refined or evolve over time as well. But what you need to do is be really deliberate about how you deliver things so that people receive them the way you intend them to.
But if it's a damaged brand, can it be resurrected and fixed?
Oh, look at Martha Stewart, right? So here's a woman. I'll tell you, there's one way you cannot resolve your brand, and I'll tell you that in a second. But so here she is. She goes to prison, right? She comes out of prison. She's a bigger deal than she was before she went to prison. And the reason is because she didn't violate her brand promise, right? We don't look to her for making, ethical stock deals. We look to Martha Stewart to know how to make a paper mache snowflake or how to make display. And if we had learned that she didn't know how to make a paper mache snowflake, or that every souffle she made fell, her brand would go away, and it would be incredibly hard to come back from that. But because the way she violated it had nothing to do with her true brand promise, we totally forgave her. So I think if you're violating your brand promise, it's pretty hard to recover from that. But if these other extraneous things are just somehow tarnishing your brand, you can easily get past it. And Martha Stewart's the poster child for that.
Well, I think it's interesting you bring her up, because I think also it helped her brand that she did some things that were kind of cool. She got to be buddies with Snoop Dogg, and then, was
exactly. And I think I have to say, she handled that incredibly perfectly. And she even continued, she was teaching people to crochet in prison, which is totally on brand for Martha Stewart, right? She was working in the prison garden. And so she just kept her brand going, despite the fact that she was wearing, stripes.
So if you get on the S list at work, you can't really crochet your way out of that. What do you do?
Yeah, well, so you have to figure out why you're there. Right. So, by the way, and here's another really important thing: strong brands often repel as many people as they attract. So, if you're trying to please everyone, chances are you're not exciting anyone. So, so it's really important to not to take a stand for the sake of pissing people off, but to take a stand to say this is what I'm about, and I'm really convicted, and this is what I really believe, and knowing that not everyone's going to agree with you. So I think you need to make a decision if I'm on this person's S list, should I care? Is that person going to impact my success or my ability to do what I need to do? So first, we can't just be upset when this person or that person doesn't like us. Number one. Number two, you have to ask yourself, can I repair this? And if you can, then you need to, and it's really kind of an individual thing, but you need to think about how you can repair it. And almost always it involves a conversation, right? So I think that you see me as the troublemaker. I don't want to be seen as the troublemaker. What I really want to be seen as the person who injects, kind of bigger thinking. And I think that that's been perceived wrongly, right? So I think that direct, honest communication is the key. However, if you're always going to be on their S list, you have to decide, do I want to stay here and or can I take what makes me great and bring it somewhere where it's more appreciated? And that's a decision people have to make for themselves.
Just the whole concept of branding has changed so dramatically because of social media. Can you talk about the changes in the last 10 years?
Yeah. And in fact, even in the last 20 years, I'll tell you, so when I started my personal branding company, I thought I was going to be the first, and I wasn't. There were 4 other people doing it. And then I joined them. And then a year later, they all left. And the reason they left is because there was zero business in personal branding. Really, people didn't get it until the internet made it a thing. And in 2003, LinkedIn, an organization I have incredible respect for, they launched the tool that made us realize we needed to have a brand. And even though that was online, back then, the brand that we realized we needed to have was in person, because we'd go to the office and would meet with people in meetings, and most of our interactions was still in the real world. And over the past 10 years, and in particular the last 2, everything, the switch flipped, and now digital precedes real. Most of your first impressions are formed online. Most of your opportunities to influence others are happening online. All of your entire brand lives in bits and bytes. And so you have to make sure that virtual you is congruent with the real you, so that if somebody does meet you online, they're getting that exact same feeling they would get if you were sitting next to them in seat 4D on the flight to Barcelona, like when you and I met.
So explain that. How do you show that and demonstrate that?
Yeah, so online. So first of all, you need to, the most important thing is your first impression. There's a concept called digital first. Do you know Mitch Joel? He wrote a book called Control Alt Delete. Great guy. He lives in Montreal. And he introduced this concept called digital first, and it means that digital precedes real. Because of that, there are two cognitive biases we have that come to play. The first is primacy. Primacy means we believe the first thing we learn. So when somebody Googles you, you need to make sure that the first thing they learn about you is exactly how you want to be known. We can talk about that in a second. The second bias that's important is anchoring. Anchoring means once we form a first impression, it's anchored in our minds. We don't want to change our minds. So if somebody meets you online, it's not anything like who you really are, but that's their impression. They don't want, even when they meet the real you, they don't want to believe the real you because they believe that. So what you need to do is you need to influence page one Google results, and you need to influence your LinkedIn profile. Most people, when they're checking us out in a professional capacity, they'll go directly to LinkedIn, right? That's the professional social network. So there's some things you can do there to really tell people who you are. But some people start at Google. And so you want to make sure page one kind of speaks to you, but guess what? Your LinkedIn profile is going to show up in one of the top 3 spots in Google. So they're going to go to Google, they're going to end up at LinkedIn anyway. So this is really good news for career-minded professionals who really want to influence others without being on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok. If you just focus on LinkedIn, you can have an impact. And you need to change your mindset that LinkedIn is a place you go to do your job. I work with 20% of Fortune 100 companies, and they are hiring me to help their people build powerful LinkedIn profiles, right? They're not afraid of them jumping ship. They're giving them permission to deliver a really powerful first impression to their colleagues and clients and so forth.
So what are you teaching them?
So
That's
first of
going
all,
to cost us $500 right now.
this is exactly, we're going to send the bills to everyone. So the 3 most important parts of your profile when it comes to delivering a first impression are your headshot, your headline, and your about. Your about used to be called summary. Your headshot makes you real. And you need to have 60% of the frame be your face. You need to be facing forward, and you need to smile, the universal welcome symbol. And so people can feel that they're getting to know you. Your headline provides relevance, right? So it tells me, if I'm looking at somebody, is this the person I think, this person should be, or who I need to be able to connect with? So that's, your headline is all about relevance, and you can add to your headline something a little unique about you, something, how you do what you do or why you do what you do, to make it a little bit more interesting so that it doesn't become I work, here's my job title, I work at this company, I live in this city, right? Make it a little bit more interesting. The most important part and the most read version of your bio will be your about. And so it used to be called summary. LinkedIn has added the number of characters you can include in your about. It's 2,000 now. And
wow.
Here's the key thing with your about. When someone's checking out your profile, they only see the first 2 or 3 lines. So those first 2 or 3 lines, you don't repeat what you told me in your headline, and don't make them boring, right? And most people, the first 2 lines, they're deadly. They're bland, they're beige, they're boring, they're banal, they're awful. What you need to do is make it provocative or compelling or exciting or intriguing so that someone will click see more and get the whole story. And there actually happen to be six ways to kick off. I've looked at more LinkedIn profiles than any human on the planet, and I've determined there's 6 ways to kick it off so that you can then deliver. By the way, then in your about, you weave together your values and your passions and your differentiators and your purpose and your goals and your values with your accomplishments and your accolades and your credentials. And when you weave that together, you're sitting at the intersection of credibility. Yep, this person's really impressive, and likability. That this person's human, and I want to connect with them on a deeper, more human level.
So what does your profile say?
So my about, by the way, so one of the 6 ways you can start your about is called point in time. And this is really good if you have an epiphany or a major life moment or something, some kind of spark in your life, and you want that to be the jumping off point for your story. And I tell the story of when I left the corporate world to start my personal branding company. So my thing starts with, I was working with this amazing company, had this incredible job. I loved what I was doing. And then it all changed, period. And then you click see more and you get, I was reading this article by Tom Peters and blah, blah, blah. So it creates intrigue. And for me, that was the biggest in my career, the biggest milestone was when I made that, working for an organization, which I loved, to starting my own business, which initially I didn't love. I loved personal branding, didn't love running my own show.
Is LinkedIn the most important part of a personal brand?
If you're an influencer, maybe TikTok or YouTube is your thing. If you're working inside a company and you want to be successful, LinkedIn is without question number one. Everywhere in the world, even in Germany where they have Zing, which is a competitor, people are on both. In China, LinkedIn is the only, as I understand it right now, the only social media tool that you can use. So it's pretty much globally true. And it is even companies with really robust intranets. The people to learn about the person who works on your team that you don't know, instead of going to the company intranet and look at their profile, you're going to LinkedIn. We know that. We have the data around that. So yeah, it is.
I really like how you have strategies for turning LinkedIn people into members of your network. How you just kind of slide in there. Can you tell a little about, how you start a contact, how you cultivate, and then finally rope them in?
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. I have one approach to almost everything in life. I just give stuff away. I really love sharing and giving stuff away. I take stuff that I think is valuable. I find it, and either I create it myself or I find it somewhere else and I curate it. And I put it out there in a really regular way. So today there was an article, this great guy, he's a social psychologist who I actually met through Dory Clark, who you know as well, at one of Dory's authors book dinners in New York. And his name is Tomas, and he's a professor at Columbia, and a really brilliant guy. And I met him at this thing in New York. I haven't talked to him in a while. I'm reading Fast Company today, which I read religiously. It's my go-to source. And he's got this incredible perspective that I've never seen before about kind of happiness and work and how you find joy or passion in what you do based on psychology and data and whatever. And he's brilliant. And so I shared that. So first I wrote to Tomas and said, wow, now he's living, by the way, in Barcelona, which crazy as that is. I sent him a note, said, thanks so much for writing this. It's absolutely brilliant. And then I shared it with my LinkedIn connections and told them why I think it's great. So it's as simple as that. If you just get in the habit of taking the stuff that you think is interesting and making it more interesting by adding your point of view and then sharing it, people say, wow, this, I never asked for anything. I just put this stuff out there and say, hey, I think you're going to love this. Check out this, or here's the best sentence I've ever read. It's in paragraph 3 of this article. Read it. What do you think? And it just starts some conversation. And the more people, even if people don't engage with your stuff, if you have a cadence, they see your name, they start to connect you with the stuff. And over time, somehow people once called me the Hotel California, because you can become my friend and then you can never leave. And I think it's true, right? So then you're stuck. You're kind of like, ooh. And then, I try to stay connected to as many. I mean, I have 50,000 people in LinkedIn now, so I don't know every single person, right? But I try to stay as connected as I can.
You have 50,000?
Yeah.
That's a few. You also said that sometimes you go to their posts, you comment on their posts. How does that expand your network?
You know what? And that's an even greater act of generosity. So, but thanks for bringing that up. When people go through a lot of work to put stuff up, even if they're just curating content, it takes time to do that. And it's an act of generosity to share that. And it's an act of generosity to comment, to like, comment, and most importantly, to reshare it, right? So you shared it with your community. I thought it was valuable. I think you're pretty cool. I'm going to reshare it with my community. So then my 50,000 people can potentially see it. And that's another way of giving value to people without asking for things. So the more you can engage in conversation, in real authentic conversation, not, oh, I haven't done anything in a while, let me just like this person's post, but you have to be sincere and you have to be really engaged in it. And every single day, there is something I see in LinkedIn that I think, I wouldn't have found this myself. This is really interesting. This is how you get these ideas that you store them, and one day they become they become a product. Like you do this all the time, Fawn. You've written how many books? Like 7,000, and that's how you told me once that you pick up these little things and somehow all of a sudden they become a best-selling book. That's how you do it, right? Because other people are giving you ideas that spark your own interpretation of them that yields you something. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting how you do this, where because there's nothing that that irritates me more than somebody gets me on LinkedIn and then they ask for something immediately, and they send you these stupid pitches that they've sent to everybody, and they just bug me. It's like, leave me alone. So I immediately delete them, right? But you're more subtle. You're saying, instead of asking for something immediately, get them to know your name just because you're interacting with them on there, and then comment on their posts, send them something related, so that when the time comes to say, hey, I need some advice on something, can we do a 15-minute Zoom? They're going to say yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so can I tell you my biggest pet peeve with LinkedIn is I don't know when it happened, but something happened and it's become a big sales, like full-time sales activity for people. And it really annoys me. And here's what I do. I have a key, a special function key. And when I get one of those things, I don't delete them. I send them a nasty note. And it's not nasty because I don't really do, nasty is not my thing. But my note says, my favorite thing about LinkedIn is connecting with interesting people to share ideas and learn from each other. My least favorite thing about LinkedIn is being sold to. So if the reason you connected with me was to sell to me, please remove me. Otherwise, I look forward to staying connected. And that's what, and I have it on the ready. I wrote a whole article about it because it is so annoying and it's so frustrating. Some people literally, that's their full, they only are connecting with people that they can sell something to. And the way you can tell them, by the way, is they often take your headline and say, I'd love to, or they take your top experience. I love what you're doing at William Arruda, motivational speaker, blah, 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 blah. So make make your first experience entry unique, because it's a bot, by the way. They're not even doing it themselves. They have a bot that goes in and it extracts that, it makes it happen. It's a whole industry. And it's so pernicious and annoying and awful. And so in fact, there was a big discussion about this with some really interesting people about how much we all hate it. So I have everyone on the ready to come up with their, what's the statement you're going to send back to these people to say, back off.
Right. Sometimes I get things from people saying, would you like to be a professional speaker? Or I can coach you so that if you hire me, you'll be able to do a TEDx talk. And or would you like to be a best-selling author?
Yeah.
And I write it back. I'm like, did you look who you just sent that to?
I know.
Or would you like to be connected to women's leadership things? And I'm thinking, that's all I do is
that's my whole career.
Right. And they don't even look. And from a broader thing, whether we're talking about this at LinkedIn or at work or anywhere else, we have to make sure that the message we're sending to people is going to the right people that want to hear exactly what we're saying.
That's right. That's right. And can I interject? There is power in second level connections, and there's a really good Harvard Business Review article about weak ties. And these people that we they're not necessarily in our org. They don't work in our area of expertise. They're not the kind of people that might be our clients or our colleagues or new hires that we might want to hire. But they're important to us because they know people who need to know us that we don't know exist. And so what I tell everyone around networking is, don't be so closed in your network that your network is, every single person in the world of finance, but nobody else, because literally there's somebody out there that needs to know you and you need to be visible to them. So be a little bit more open. What I don't want to have in my network is I like to have people who have a similar mindset, that they believe that networking is about benefiting each other, that they really care about human connection and not about transactions and sales. And so those are the people I like to weed out. But I pretty much, and you too, Fawn, you speak in it. I was going to say you go to a place and speak, but we don't do that anymore. You sit in front of your computer and you speak to 500 people, right? Those people have a relationship with you because you've just talked to them. Now, you may not know who they are, but letting them into your network is really important because they feel they have a relationship with you. And your way of keeping that relationship ongoing after you're done with that keynote and you move on is through social media. So having those people, stay connected is valuable.
I think one thing that bonds us that may be interesting to others is that you and I have very little tolerance for BS. We do not like inauthentic, fake people who puff themselves up and create some sort of an image. And I'll put mine out there. That makes me crazy because, there are a lot of motivational speakers whose only job qualification is that they're motivated. They have done nothing except study how to be a speaker and put on nice shoes. Mm-hmm. And I'm so put off by people whose brand is this fake stuff. So how do you bottle and sell as your brand authenticity? How do you share reality so people feel like they can connect with you and want to connect with you?
Yeah, you know what? It's you be human. I got to tell you, this is the most amazing thing is the more people give themselves permission to be themselves, the more successful they become. And if you can be genuine and human every day in every interaction, not be thinking about what can I get out of this situation, or that's what builds emotional connect. We make the way our brain works, right? Whenever we're making a decision, the part of our brain that activates first is emotion before the rational part. And so we make every single decision in life based on emotion. We just pretend we made it rationally. Like, why did you buy that glass? Well, it's going to last for 50 years and it's whatever. We back it up with that, but we really bought it because we're like, wow, that's a like, boy, does that make me feel good for whatever reason. So it's the same with our interactions with people. If we can be really emotionally open and connect with them, this is what, and by the way, this is so essential. So all my work is really inside companies. I don't work with entrepreneurs really that much. And here's what's happening inside companies. Technology is entering the workforce. There are robots and there's AI and there's virtual reality and there's data and there's all this stuff. The only thing of value that we can offer our employer is our humanity, because all of that stuff, I work for one of the big 4 accounting firms. You know what? AI can fill out a tax form, but it can't build a relationship with a client. And it can't motivate a team to come up with new ideas about offerings that you can deliver. And so I really think it's about being real and human. And some people can't be that because all of what they've come up with is fake. And that's kind of what their thing is. So I never worry. So I just like you, I cannot stand these people who are just pretending. However, I also don't worry about them or let them bother me, because I believe if you haven't developed your expertise. People copy my personal branding methodology all the time. There's 3 steps to personal branding. But I think if you can't come up with it yourself, I don't have to worry about you, because you're really right. So I just kind of try not to, they're annoying, and I try just not to focus on it. And I focus on people who are real. And I focus on companies. The only kind of companies I want to work for are the ones that say, our people are our greatest asset, and they believe it. Right? That they really want to unearth the unique nugget of value that each person has to offer. And of course, that's what sparks innovation and delivers new things to the marketplace. So I don't know.
There's someone in the audience here who just got a really great promotion into leadership. And how would you advise her to boost her brand with people up at the highest level so that this is the beginning of a real fast track?
Yeah. So first of all, your brand has you've made, if you, especially in those move to leadership thing, your brand's changed, and the things that you need to communicate are less about your subject matter expertise, less about the technical skills that you have, and much more about your leadership skills. So you have to go back to everything that you have, your LinkedIn, about everything, and make sure that you're demonstrating the things that make you relevant to the role of a leader. And this is the biggest mistake a lot of times it's our subject matter expertise that gets us to that leadership role, and then we keep focusing on that. That's not what people need from you anymore. You have people on your team now who are subject matter experts who could probably do it at least or maybe almost as good as you. So you really need to adopt this new, what are the things that are most important to the people who put me in this leadership role? So what elements of who I am? Is it my compassion? Is it my relationship building? Is it my ability to coach? Is it my commitment to diversity and inclusion? What are the things that are really valuable to the organization at a much higher, more leadership-oriented level? And then you have to rewrite the stuff that you have that puts that in there, so that as people who are in this new echelon start to meet you, whether they're meeting you in the real world or the virtual world, that's what they're getting. You need to change your elevator pitch, right? Your elevator pitch should be 3 things you want people to know about you, the 1 thing you want them to ask you more about so that you can talk about it, and the emotion that you want them to feel when you're engaged. So if you have those elements, rethink those now and imagine yourself delivering your elevator pitch to all the people 1 level above you and 1 level above them. What are the things that are going to be compelling to them? What's the thing you want them to ask you about so that you can share more about it? There's a really important evolution that needs to happen, and you need to show that you're now in this leadership gang and you belong there, not in the previous kind of role that you had.
You keep saying things that make me want to just jump through the screen and like say, tell me more, because you got the 3 things, the 6 things, there are lots of lists. Which of your books, and you've got a bunch, right? Which
I don't have, not like you. You could fill a whole library. I have like a little tiny section of a little tiny section compared to you.
Well, in that little tiny section, which is the one that is the blood and guts of branding for them?
I think the right one for now is Digital You, just because it talks about the new digital world. And it's really, it's frankly, it's in fact, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but here's why, I don't love writing books. You like writing books. I don't love writing books, but I'll tell you what I get when I write a book: clarity. Like, I have all this stuff in my head and I talk about it in my public speaking, but it doesn't really become like really crystal until I have to put it in a book. And so what I realized in writing this book is that the real you and the virtual you, to make them congruent, it's a translation process. It's not thinking about them separate. It's figure out the real first and then translate it. How does this work in bits and bytes? And by the way, I'll tell you the key, if you really want to impact people online: video. Words account for 7% of a communication. The rest is tone of voice, intonation, body language, what's behind you. All of that is much more powerful. So a new feature in LinkedIn that you may not know about is the LinkedIn cover story. So sitting behind your headshot, right? If you go to my LinkedIn profile, for example, you can see that someone gets to your page, all of a sudden a video opens up and you do a 30-minute elevator pitch kind of thing. And that is a way of engaging people. Video is, now that we've moved online.
I gotta go record that right now.
Yeah. Oh, you should so do it. And video is the most important communications tool we have. And a synchronous video like we have right now, and asynchronous video. And so getting good at video, if you're an executive, if you're working in a company, if you want to get good at one thing this year, get really good at video. And most people aren't really great at it yet. So there's an opportunity for you to really stand out if you make an effort.
Right. And because we do so much contact that way, it's not always delivery, but it's your lighting and it's your background and it's things that you may take for granted. And what about if you're branding yourself? How do you feel about it? And I'm not insulting the many people who are not on camera right now, but if you're in a meeting for work, do you need to be visible, or is it okay to not be visible?
No, not only do you need to be visible, you need to be deliberate in delivering value in the meeting. If you go to a meeting and you have your camera on and nobody hears anything from you, it's like you didn't attend the meeting. And since we don't see people in the hallways, getting a cup of coffee or going out to lunch with them, the only opportunity you have to influence those around you is in these meetings. So you need to be deliberate. And if you're an introvert, right, and a lot of introverts have been really happy working at home, and I get more done. I don't have all these people taking energy from me, right? You need to give yourself a job. Now, your job can be just to acknowledge people. Say, hey, Deborah, I love the way you put that. That was so helpful, right? Or you can be the person who sums things up at the end. You ask the meeting leader, what role can I have, so that you can be delivering value and people can see that you were there, right? Authentically.
Well, that's really helpful, and make the statements. Michelle, how are we doing with the chat room?
Hey, we've got some great questions. So awesome, just awesome insight so far. There's a couple, let's see, I'd lead off with. So we've got a few folks on the call that have been down one track. So a lot of it had business and corporate, and because of the pandemic, they're venturing into gig economy, trying some new things. So for example, I'm an engineer, but hey, I want to teach yoga. So how do you help them pivot from this place where they've been really known to now entering in this new area?
Yeah. So first of all, there's stuff even in engineering that you do or that that has value to yoga and what you're doing next. And you might have to think about it really hard, but you're going to find things that are transitionable. And you say, like the way that I work this brain, and this is why I deliver yoga this way, or whatever it is. So you want to be able to take all that stuff that's still relevant from the past and bring it to the way you communicate about who you are in the future. The second thing is you need to be really specific about who your target audience is. Who are these people? What are the demographics and psychographics associated with these people? And how do you start building your network with these people who are now the new people that you need to impact and influence? Personal branding is not about being famous. It's about being selectively famous. So you need to know who needs to know me, and then always be visible to that community. So once you're clear about your brand, you can then do that. Tell the story that includes what you were doing in the past and why you made the transition, because that's what people want to know about you. A lot of people, they chop it off and say, well, that was my old engineering stuff that I did for high-tech company XYZ. This is my new stuff, and I want to be known here. The thing that's going to interest people is, so you had a job in engineering and high tech, and now you're teaching yoga. Tell me about that, right? So that's the interesting thing. That's the story to tell. And you might be, right? Branding is about differentiation. You might be one of the few yoga teachers who has a degree in engineering and is doing that. So always embrace the stuff of the past and use it as much as you can in whatever that new thing is that you're pursuing.
Really great advice. And I like the bleed over into how that can apply to that about section on the LinkedIn profile. So thank you for that. We have another comment or question around folks. There's a particular individual on the call, Lori. She had been actively engaging in social, posting, sharing her advice. Well, suddenly found herself playing defense, where somebody took something out of context. And, it was a difficult situation. So now it's holding her back from engaging as much in social. So what kind of advice, if you've got the hater, somebody just negative coming at you, to be able to recover and continue to build your brand in a positive way?
Yeah. So here's the thing. There are always, if you have at all a point of view or an opinion, there's going to be somebody who does not agree with it. And that's just how it is. And, once I wrote this article for Forbes, and the article was called why you should always fly first class. Right. So I thought it was an innocuous article, and it was an interesting thing. And that was and I know Fawn disagrees with this because she's like, I don't care where I sit in a plane. But anyway, but oh my gosh, the hate and vitriol I got from one person about this. And they clearly didn't read it. They just read the title, and they just decided, here is some obnoxious, entitled, whatever. And went off on me publicly, and it was crazy. And I thought to myself, so my first question was, should I have published the article? And then I said, yeah, it was a good article, and it had a good message. And then I just decided, you have to make the decision, respond or ignore. This person was so like, ooh, I decided not to respond, because it was only going to create some back and forth hate and vitriol and anger. And I just ignored. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm so glad you commented on that. That was not my intent at all. What I really meant here was this. And I hope you understand that that's my intent. And then you have a conversation with that person, or you take it offline. What you can't do is let any naysayer stop you from being visible, available, and valuable to your audience. And that's what you need to be. So maybe you start out being a little cautious and say maybe your point of view is watered down a little bit, and you'll work your way back up to just putting it out there, right? As long as it's done with positive intent to deliver value to others, and it's true and authentic and honest and part of who you are, you should be comfortable putting it out there.
But I think there's a really interesting point there that careen's out of control. I see this on the local level a lot, which is haters with it. And not just on that very full of itself first class concept, which I'm sure I understand the networking and the value of that, but that it's an out of control thing when people start lining up against you online. Poor old Kim Kardashian has her hands full with that right now. So that is an interesting thing of how do you control this out of control narrative that other people are shaping, and it's not true.
Yeah, I think most people, they're not going to encounter that because they're not doing something that is, or they're totally aware that they're going to be doing that because they're out there with things that are, really taking a stand, being really controversial. And so they know that that's going to happen. I think occasionally things go the wrong way. And you write something and then you wish you could take it back, but it took on a life of its own. There are organizations that actually deal in helping you handle this kind of stuff, so that you can get your reputation back and it's not been, contorted by a mob of people who, for whatever reason, are angry at you. And so at some point, if it gets that bad, you need to get some professional help because you can't counteract that by yourself, right? There's an angry mob of people and you're a one person trying to do your best.
So another one, this came from Ken. He was just talking about the fact that everything is just moving so quickly. So people are looking at your branding, they're making very fast snap decisions, and maybe you're growing and evolving. So how do you give people tips on how they can keep their brand fresh, relevant, and very clear in terms of setting someone's expectations?
Yeah, and evolution. So there are 3 C's of branding: clarity, consistency, constancy. Clarity means be clear about who you are and who you're not. If you look online at what I post, every single thing I post about is personal branding. That's my thing, right? What's your thing? And that's it. You become known by something because of repetition. It takes people 6 times of seeing the same TV ad before they even acknowledge the product that's being advertised. So you might think that you've you annoyed people by over communicating. They haven't even heard from you yet. If you post something on LinkedIn, only 2 to 5% of the people in your network actually see it because they have to be either in your feed or in their feed when it posts, or looking at their feed. So be clear about who you are, be consistent, right? Always talk about that. Always talk in the same way. Whatever your personality is, make sure that personality is injected into everything you do. And then constancy is the really important C here. And that is always be visible. Don't go into hiding, right? So it means have something valuable to say. And if your brand's evolving, right, then what you say will be evolving. So over time, their perception of you is going to evolve at the same time. But make a commitment, develop a cadence, another C, so that you say, I'm going to post something every day or at least once a week or whatever it is. And make sure it has value, make sure it's consistent with how you want to be known, and then just keep the cadence.
Love it. I have one final question. All right. Giving us a lot of stuff here. If I have to walk away and do one thing to start this journey, what would be the most important thing I could start doing now?
Define your brand. So know your unique promise of value. So look at the 6 drivers of your brand: your values, your passions, your superpowers, your differentiators, your purpose, and your goals. Get feedback from others. Distill it down into what your brand promise is, right? What do you offer for whom and why is it valuable and unique? And then make sure that everything that you do and everything that you communicate reinforces what you learned about yourself. That's how brands are built, right? Apple, we think innovation because everything they do. Do you ever get an Apple product, you keep the box that it came in, even though you never use it because it's so innovative, right? Volvo owns safety because every car they build is safe and safer, right? So, the more you can repeat that unique promise of value, the more you can own it. And the more you can, and the easier you can translate it for the bits and bytes world.
Can you repeat those 6 things again, kind of slowly, because you've said them twice, and I think they're so fast that we couldn't get them. But what were they?
The 6 ways. The 6 drivers of your brand.
Yeah.
Your values, your passions, and they don't have to be connected to work. Just the things you're passionate about. Your differentiators, the things that separate you from everyone else. And by the way, again, maybe you speak 5 languages, but you only work in English. But the fact that you speak 5 languages, that's interesting. Your goals. So what do you want to do next and after that? Your purpose. Why are you here? Not the what you do or the how you do it, but the why you do it, right? And your superpowers, the things you do better than anyone else, the signature strength that you can build your brand around.
Those are really great. And, I know we're getting close to running out of time here. And that, William, every time I hear you, I learn so much more. And then I feel like, oh man, I did that wrong and I did that wrong. How do you suggest people get in touch with you if they want to get you as a speaker, if they want to find out about coaching?
Yeah, so WilliamArruda.com, I think, is the best place to go. For my speaking and my corporate training kind of stuff. And then I have a new company with an amazing coach called Aura, which is called careerblast.tv, where we do a lot of it's much more product focused rather than me focused. But I will say, you know what, Fawn, you're doing it all right. You have an incredibly strong brand. You're really consistent. You got all the right stuff out there. You're doing things like this incredible podcast. So I think people could watch you and see what you're doing and maybe learn some stuff.
You're such a sweetheart. Well, I have great love for you. I have great love for Michelle, my partner in this, for Ash Thompson, who left. She's just the greatest producer on this. And for all of you people, I want to thank you for coming today. Our next event is going to be a class looking at dealing with a toxic workplace and the boss holes and all of these challenges that we face at work. Michelle, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
I really encourage everyone to take to heart some of these great steps that William shared and go apply it. Apply it right now, because any step is going to be a step forward in getting you to the place that you want to be and the reputation that you want to have with the world. So just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Go to womensleadershipnetwork.com, follow us, and we will be in touch. Thank you, everybody.